Hi everyone, my name is Ann Rogers and I'm a Research Data Manager at PMA, and the purpose of this video is to go over understanding commits made by other GitHub users. If you are unfamiliar with GitHub or GitKraken, please see our other videos, the GitHub SOP, or the GitKraken support website. First, you've heard us use the word commit a lot in these videos. Now we're going to go into what is a commit and how to understand commits. Remembering that repositories are how PMA stores do files, and within repositories there are branches which are parallel versions of the repository that you can edit without affecting other users' branches. Now, within a branch, you have commits. A commit is basically an individual change to a file or several files. You can think of it as like when you save a file. Previously at PMA, when a change was made to a do file, you would save that change and leave a written comment in the do file about why you made that change and what the change was. Now with GitHub and GitKraken, you can just save the file and then you make a commit in GitHub and GitKraken, and it saves all that information in the background so that your do file can stay clean and comment free. Again, a commit is basically a save. Now, when it comes to understanding other people's commits, you will see here on the main GitKraken screen what is called the commit graph. This shows all the commits, branches, and tags in a particular repository. These are the individual commits. You will see a little circle here indicating the user who made the commit and the commit summary. Now, almost unlike every other task that we do in GitKraken, it doesn't matter what branch you have checked out in terms of understanding commits made by other users. As you can see here, we've checked out the master branch, but say we're interested in understanding commits in the 2019 branch over here. We just click on the commit. You can click on any commit, but for this particular video, we'll be clicking on Format Loops in Country-Specific Clean Weight. And over here in the commit panel, we will see the details of the commit. You will have the commit summary, which is what appears in the commit graph, and the commit description, which has a more in-depth description of what occurred during the commit. And you will see here, it says example in all capital letters. That is because for the purposes of these training videos, all the commits are examples and not necessarily changes that will be occurring with PMA. Below the commit summary and description is the author of the commit and the date that they authored that commit. So as you can see here, Ann Rogers, me, I made this commit on May 17th, 2019. Then the commit panel will show you how many files are affected by this commit and how they are affected. As you can see here, we have this little orange icon with the ellipses in the center saying 1 modified. The orange icon indicates that an existing file in the repository was modified. If the icon were red, it would indicate that one file had been deleted. If it were green, it would indicate that one file had been added. And if it were blue, it would indicate that a file had been renamed. For example, if we go back to our commit graph and click Added Core HHQ FQ Cleaning Do Files, we see the green icon here, 15 added. But back to the Format Loops commit, then we see here the files that were affected by this commit. You also have the option to click View All Files, and all the files in the repository will appear, but the icon is only next to the file that was affected by the commit. Now, that has given us an overview of what occurred in the commit, but to see the exact details and lines of code that were affected in a commit, go to the file that was affected or modified during the commit and click it within this pane in the commit panel. We are now taken to the diff checker or Diff Viewer. There are lots of different ways to view the modifications made to a file in GitHub or GitKraken. In GitKraken, let's check out the file view. The file view shows you all the code in the file as is. This is not terribly helpful for PMA if you're trying to understand a change made to the file, because unless you've memorized the do files, the differences won't pop out to you. However, in File View, you can click History, and you will get a list of all the commits in this repository that have affected this particular file. And to go even more in depth, you can go back to the top right corner and click Blame. Despite the negative meaning of the word blame, here in fact it is just showing us which commit affected which lines of code in the do file. So as you can see here, added core HHQ FQ cleaning, the commit right here, affected all the lines of code highlighted by this green line, and as we scroll we get to format loops and country specific, affected these lines of code highlighted by the pink line, and so on and so forth for every line of code that was affected by a commit. This can be helpful for PMA users who just want to know the history of the do file, if you don't necessarily care exactly what was changed in the code. But at PMA, if we want to understand exactly how the code was changed, what the previous code was, and what the new code was, we need to go to the Diff Viewer. To get there, we close the file history, and we move out of File View into Diff View. Diff View shows the user exactly what changed in a file. Lines in red are lines that were deleted. Lines in green are lines that were added. It can be slightly confusing because, as you see here, the actual code in line 73, gen var equals 0 if assets, etc., was not actually deleted, but since it was changed, GitKraken views that as a deletion and then this line as an addition. The Diff Viewer has three main ways to view files: Hunk View, Inline View, and Split View. First, we're going to go through Hunk View. Hunk View shows changes to the do files in just chunks of code and doesn't show you the rest of the code in the file if it hasn't been changed. So as you can see here, the first hunk or chunk is this bit right here. The second is down with livestock, and the third and the fourth, if you scroll down, are further here. You can also use these navigation arrows at the top to scroll through the changes in the file. If we click the down arrow, it will take us to the next change, and then once we've reached through all the changes, it will take us back to the top of the do file. In this particular example, the navigation arrows aren't so relevant because there aren't that many changes in the file. However, if there were quite a few changes, the arrows are helpful. Now, on to Inline View. Unlike Hunk View, Inline View shows you the whole do file, even the code that hasn't been changed. As you can see here, there's all this code with no colors, but if we scroll back down, we see the colored code, which again, red identifies deletions from the old version of the do file, and green identifies additions into the new version of the do file. Inline View shows us the code in the do file in a single screen with the previous version's code on top and the new version's code below. In Inline View, you also have this sidebar on the right that shows you where you are in the do file and where the changes in the do file are, again identified by red and green. As Inline View has the whole code in the do file, this is where the navigation arrows become much more helpful than in Hunk View. Because if we click Next Change, instead of having to scroll through the whole do file, it will take us directly down to where the next change is. Now on to Split View. Split View shows the old version of the do file on the left and the new version of the do file on the right. As in Inline View, it has all the code in the do file and not just the changed code like Hunk View. Similarly to Inline View, the navigation arrows are helpful in the Split View because it's easier than scrolling all the way through the file, as it will take you directly to the next change. So if we select next change, it scrolls through the file and takes us to all the changes in the do file. Again, there is this right bar showing the number of changes and their location in the do file. Now you will notice there is this last button up here next to the view types. This button is not a view type, but it does affect how changes to the do files are presented in the Diff Viewer. It is called Ignore Whitespace, and what it does is it hides changes to the code that aren't written text, that are just simply additions of spaces, indentations, enters, things that won't affect how the code is run, but affects how the code looks. I like to have Ignore Whitespace on because it means that when I'm scrolling through changes in a commit, I don't have to see the changes that don't affect how the code will run. So let's click Ignore Whitespace. You can see that it says file contents are unchanged. That's because if we go to the commit description here, we will see that it says indent the loops in the do file to make the file easier to read. All of the changes in this do file were indentations, and they didn't change how the do file ran. So with Ignore Whitespace on, we don't see those changes. And when you select Ignore Whitespace or any of these other views in the Diff Viewer, those settings and views are what will remain when you next look at another commit. So if we leave the Diff Viewer for the Format Loops commit and move to the Removed FP Add Radio commit, you can go here, select the affected file. All of our settings from before are still here. Ignore Whitespace is still on. As we were in Split View last, we're still in Split View, etc. Now that you know how to understand other GitHub users' commits, you can move on to learning about how to make commits and branches of your own. Thanks for watching this video.